Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Agile Austin Product and AI SIG for the month of April. Very happy to have you all here today, and we're very fortunate to have Candace with us, and she's going to be doing if you liked her yesterday at the Keep Austin Agile conference, you're going to love her even more because she's back in potentially a different kind of setting, but we can either dive deep or see content for the first time if you didn't see it yesterday. So thank you, Candace, for being here back to back. I know it's a lot. Um, she's going to be talking about AI-driven product owners and building agents and all sorts of really cool stuff. So this is going to be a super fun talk. I really enjoyed it yesterday, and I'm excited to do more today. A little bit about Agile Austin. I'll go through this relatively quickly. It's a 501c6 nonprofit based out of Austin, but as we have folks from all over the world that participate in our SIGs now that we have Zoom, and we have the whole world. There's board of directors there. Max is the president. Ben sometimes stops in as our chief technology officer. Sid, Jenny, and Chase. We're all here. I'm a volunteer. We're all here to be of service to the community, both in Austin and around the world. There's ways to sponsor. If you're interested, reach out to become a sponsor, and then you can be a member and has some privileges, but many of those privileges are just what you're here today, and you don't have to pay anything for it. So feel free to inquire on that. There are 6 different Agile Awesome meetups. You'll see Product and AI SIG is one of them, and there's coaching, Agile at Scale, book club, leaders, and lean Kanban. We've got some great sponsors, including Agile Velocity for over a decade, a newer sponsor, ResumeX, and Admiral Coaching has been with us for a while. We've got, as a member, one of the benefits is that you can apply for a professional development scholarship. And please feel free to reach out if you have questions about that. If you're interested in training, Agile Velocity offers a 15% off discount for public workshops. You can either snap that now or ask me later, and I will make sure to get that code to you. I'm a volunteer. Candace has been a volunteer. There's probably many people in this room that have also been volunteers at Agile Austin. Maybe have served on the board too. So it's just us. We're a community-driven organization. There's 2 leaders of this product and AI SIG. I'm one. I started my membership of Agile Austin. Goodness, in a couple of years, it's going to be 20 years ago. That's unbelievable. And Vishal Sheth also, and he's not able to make it today. We've got some upcoming events. Next month, Tristan Slominski, longtime Agile Austin friend and contributor, is going to be talking about the Thousand Brains project and what he's doing. The path to AGI is not what you think it is. Read a book a couple of years ago that is the basis of Thousand Brains, and this might be mind blowing what he talks about in a different way than Candace will be talking about. We've got Dan McGrill and Ravi Verma, Unlocking Product Management with Gen AI, which I think was also featured at yesterday's Keep Austin Agile conference. And we're open for July 25. What have you learned? What do you have to share? How have you failed? I like coming to Agile Austin and talking about how I screwed up. So, um, and some successes too. But today, we're here for Candace, and I won't go too much into this talk because you're here. You've seen the synopsis. It's really exciting what Candace is going to walk us through. But just a little bit about Candace, if you're not familiar, she's a business architect, PMI Agile certified practitioner at Argon Digital. She's a software development professional services. This is a software development professional services and training company based in Austin, Texas. She's got well over 10 years of experience in product ownership, business analysis. She works with clients all the time to identify, implement requirements that generate the best ROI for the projects, regardless of where you are in the development lifecycle. She loves learning how to optimize Agile in large enterprises and Agile requirements for very technical or back-end systems. And one of her interests is what you're going to be talking about today is using new AI tools to enhance product ownership techniques. And so with that, Candace, I'm going to stop sharing and
Sounds
get
good.
over to you. And thank you so much and welcome, Candace.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here. Thanks everyone for joining. Okay, everybody can see my screen? Yep.
Looks good.
Good. Okay, so uh, as Matt said, I'm Candace Hokason. I'm a business architect at Argonne Digital. This is the same content as yesterday. So if you saw me yesterday, you're more than welcome to stay, but again, we can ask different questions, but the content itself is going to be the same. So if you came here looking for like the part two, I don't have that built yet. Um, but at Argonne Digital, a lot of our projects have revolved around AI and automation more and more these years, the last couple of years. And so we really started to look into like, well, how do we use these tools? How could they help us on our projects and help us be better product owners? And that's really where this came from. It's what this is all about. We're going to talk a little bit, kind of from the beginning, what are the terms all the way through, like what are the use cases in product management? But as we're doing that, I do have a caveat. I am a product owner at heart. I am not an AI expert. If you start asking me questions about vector databases and embedding models, I'm probably not going to help you. I can point you to people who might be able to help you, but that's not really my forte. But having had some hands-on and doing this, hopefully I can open up to some new use cases that you may not have tried, or maybe you'll have some use cases I haven't tried. I did not see a poll in here, but I wanted to start with a quick poll. So I guess we can just use our hands and the React button just to see where everybody is in their AI journey. So if you are using AI regularly in your work, so like for business and seeing that business value, say like, let's say weekly, go ahead and raise your hands. See if I can make sure I can see the people. Okay, I got at least one. Okay, two, very good. You can go ahead and I don't know if you can undo those or not. There we go. So I can get to the next one. If you consider yourself relatively new, maybe you're using AI for personal items, but you haven't really explored it for a business setting, go ahead and raise your hand, or maybe not raise your hand, yeah, thumbs up maybe. Okay, we got a couple of fairly new folks. Yep. Okay, good. And then if you're the AI expert, you're using it day in and day out, you maybe know some more of those technical questions. Maybe you can answer my vector database questions. Give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Gotcha.
It's a pretty even crowd. We are going to start from the beginning. So this is really a beginner intermediate talk. Again, I'm not going to go super into the technical details because that's not my forte, but I'm hoping to kind of show you guys what I've learned so far. And if we'll have time, hopefully we'll have time for questions, but I do have a lot of content and I will probably be going pretty fast. So let's jump in. So what are we here to talk about today? So this is my agenda. I want to, again, as I said, I'm going to start at the beginning, give you an introduction to AI, introduce all the terms that were definitely gibberish to me when I started, so we can start kind of from the same perspective. Then we're going to talk through one very specific use case for product management, creating virtual SMEs or AI SMEs to help us get more information quickly. Then I'll walk through a couple of what I call the advanced AI use cases. These are ones that either we are starting to dabble in at Argonne Digital, but maybe haven't gotten fully there, or ones that I just really want to happen because it would make my life easier. We'll talk through some of those. And then because security is such a big deal with AI, we're going to talk a little bit about using AI securely. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's go get started. So first, some terms. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here just so that everybody's got all the same technical terms together. Starting at the top, Gen AI. So when most people say the word AI today, they really mean generative AI. And generative AI is a subset of the broader AI landscape. So if you were at Keep Boston Agile yesterday, Jay talked a little bit about that at our keynote. So AI really is encompassing machine learning and deep learning, and generative AI is just kind of the newest, most popular sub version of AI. And what that means is it's generative AI because it can create new content, hence the generative. In those, other terms you'll hear is the LLM or large language model. This is really it's the model behind generative AI. It's how generative AI gets its results. These days, it's a little bit of an outdated term because obviously language is more text-based, but today most of our Gen AI and LLMs are multimodal, that second word there, which means they can do multiple modes. They can go across text, audio, or images. In order to understand what the LLM is and how it works, it actually does help to think back to where this started with text. So We like to think of the LLMs as like kind of a really complicated, large autocorrect. So the LLM takes your input, that prompt that you give it, and based on all of its training, so it's been trained on all of this data across all the internet and whatever else the company that made it had, it will use that training to say, okay, based on this prompt, what is the next best, statistically best word choice to answer that prompt? Then it'll start over. It'll go back to your prompt, take what it generated, come up with the next word chunk, and it'll keep doing this until it thinks it has the statistically best answer for your prompt. And that's what it gives you. Now, of course, text is kind of the most common, but the same mechanism works for audio or video, right? So it'll calculate the next seconds in the audio clip or the next pixels for the picture. So it's always iterating on that. So LLM is just really the model that gets us the output of the Gen AI. A couple other terms you might hear is an SLM, a small language model. Same idea, just it's trained on less things. So this could mean that it's just less good across the board, but it's still a generic generative AI model. Or it could mean that it really niched down in a specific area or industry, and thus it has really deep learning, but only about that one thing. So if you ask about that one thing, you get really good answers. If you ask about anything else, you get really bad answers. So that's just about how much training and how many things it was trained on. Another big term that you'll hear a lot these days is GPT, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer. This is a specific type of LLM. It's really the most common one out there today, but it does get confusing, and I'm hoping I won't confuse you all throughout this talk because it actually gets used in multiple places, even though it's all the same acronym. So it's both the type of model. OpenAI calls their versions of their models GPT-4 or GPT-4o, GPT 3.5. And then also inside OpenAI, you can have what we're going to call them custom GPTs, but they just call them GPTs. So you'll hear that in three ways. Typically, if you hear a number, it's going to refer to that OpenAI version. If you don't hear a number, it's just referring to GPT as an LLM type. For us today, these two are going to be very important: RAG, retrieval augmented generation. This is really where you start giving the AI your own documentation. You give it your information and not just a prompt so that it can reference that as well as all of its training to give you a better answer. And that's really where we're going to start, not start, we have seen a lot of the best use cases and gains because it's a lot smarter than just the general knowledge. It has your specific context as well as all of its training. And lastly, the context window. This is kind of like the AI's memory. So it's about how much the AI can really process before it starts to get fuzzy, before it starts to really make mistakes. And you'll hear this term called hallucination. That's really AI. Sometimes you'll just start making things up and it'll be really confident about the things that it made up, but sometimes they're wrong. So we'll talk about some rules of how to identify that. Well, not really identify that, but rules for how much you should trust the AI here in a bit. So now that we've got our definitions out of the way, let's talk about just the value. Why should we care? You guys all took an hour of your day to join a Zoom call, and I'm sure everybody has way too many Zoom calls already. So I'm probably preaching to the choir because you're here to hear about AI. But we do find that some people have to kind of show that value or that ROI to their bosses, their leadership, to get them bought in. So I'm going to give you a couple of studies that hopefully you can use if you need to prove that ROI. The first is what truly is the impact of AI on our worker tasks, on the things that we do as like product owners or product managers. So this first study that I'm going to reference is done by the Boston Consulting Group, Harvard, MIT, a lot of really big names. And what they did is they took 750 Boston Consulting Group consultants and they split them into three groups. The first group just did their normal day-to-day jobs, no generative AI. The second group had access to Gen AI, say like a chat GPT, but they weren't given any training. They were just said, yep, you can use it, fine, but do your work. The third group had generative AI, but also had training to go along with it and said, here's how you use this to help you with your work. Once they had those three groups, they gave all three groups the same 18 different, what they call high-level knowledge worker tasks. And the reason they picked these specific 18 tasks was because they had benchmarks for what good quality looked like for each of them. So each group did all the tasks. They measured both the quality and the time it took. And what they found out is the two groups that had Gen AI had their work rated as 40% higher quality. They finished it 25% faster and then took on 12% more tasks than were expected of them. So if we're thinking about the ROI, this is a really, with 750 people, it's a pretty good sized study. So it's a good benchmark for measuring ours as well as for saying what's possible to our leadership. So we like to use this in terms of a benchmark for ourselves as well. As you're implementing AI, if you're not seeing these type of gains or comparable gains, it may actually be something in your process. We like to say that generative AI is, I mean, it's a tool, but it's also a skill. We have to learn how to better give the AI information and point it in the right direction so that it can give us better information. So if you're say, you implement this and you're only seeing like 10% higher quality or 5% faster times, well, maybe you need additional training as well to get the most ROI out of your AI usage. Now, they used these 18 high-level knowledge worker tasks because they were things that they knew AI should be good at and help with. AI isn't good at everything, but a lot of the stuff that it is more knowledge-based, it is good at. That leads me to my next study here. Because it is not good at everything. It's not going to be good at everything. So one of the things we see is they go, hey, great, 40% higher quality, 25% faster times. Let's put AI everywhere. And you don't want the pendulum to swing too far either. So you really want to take a process view and say, of the processes that I have and of the actions I'm taking, where can AI really help me? And where are the things that maybe I, as the human, should be the one in control? So McKinsey did this study a while back, and what they looked at was across thousands of processes and hundreds of business areas. They looked at where AI was predicted to have the most gain in efficiencies and gain in productivities. And what they found is out of those thousands of processes, only 64 were really set to gain the most. And of those 64, these, what is that, six up here in blue, had 75% of those gains. So it's a very targeted, narrow areas of where they think the most gain in generative AI is going to be. And we're not talking small numbers here. The projected gains in productivity are 2 to 4 trillion with a T, in the next couple years. So it is a lot of productivity gains we're hoping to get, and in very narrow areas. But as you can see, software engineering is right up there along with product R&D. So a lot of the areas where we as product owners and product managers play in. One last thing, it was really just, this one's more about the speed. So even if AI isn't perfect at everything now, maybe it's not going to do the best for your things, it's learning so fast and the models are coming along so fast. So this study, this is actually a bit of an older study now, but it's still a very good example. This study was on medical licensing. And so they took what, medical licensing test that a human to pass would need a 60, and then they compared it to various LLMs, so GPT-3.5 you see here, GPT-4o. A human expert typically is in the 90s. They score very highly. They also compared it to this MedPalm as a medical specific LLM that is trained very specifically on medical data. And the time between GPT-3.5 and GPT-4 was about half a year, about 6 months. And in that time, the AI went from just barely passing to getting pretty darn close to a human expert. So if that's only 6 months, what can a year or 2 years do? And this is fairly consistent across the areas where the AI is good at. So again, it's not good at everything, but of those things it's good at, it's moving this quickly, where good LLMs are getting really close to that human expert level. Okay, so you're bought in. You see the value of it, you want to use AI. The next biggest thing we get asked is, how can I trust it? What do I do with those AI results? Because sometimes, again, it just gives me the wrong answer. And maybe I don't know what the right answer is. So we want to talk a little bit, I'm going to give you two kind of rules of thumb, one for when to trust or not trust the AI, and then one for how do I even pick which LLM or which AI to use? There are hundreds and thousands of tools out there. Which one is right for me? So we're going to talk about two rules of thumb for that. The first here, we'll talk about more in details, our Teddy Roosevelt rule for AI. So we came across this quote a while back and it's really stuck with us. So this is from Teddy Roosevelt. And he said, if I can be right 75% of the time, I shall have come up to the fullest measure of my hopes. And to me, that was just crazy because I don't know about you guys. I personally like to think that I'm right closer to 90% of the time, but that a president thought he was clearly incorrect at least 25% of the time is mind-boggling. But the same is true with AI. So that's our Teddy Roosevelt rule, is assume it is only 75% correct. Although AI can be great, it can be a co-pilot, it can be a helper for us in our product management tools, we really want to start with that base assumption that it's no better than Teddy Roosevelt, that it's no better than 75% correct. And if we do that, it'll help us avoid a lot of issues because we're not going to take it as the gospel truth. We're going to be more discerning. We're going to say, well, is that really? Maybe I need to go check it against other items. With that, though, you really want to do a kind of a risk reward analysis of what things do I want to put in there, knowing that it may only be 75% correct. If it's something like brainstorming or creative endeavors, maybe you don't care that it's wrong because you really just wanted to generate a lot of information or a lot of ideas really quickly, and you're going to go vet them later. But if it's something where you get a wrong answer and it could, say, I want it to help me write my user stories, and I'm not going to actually read the user stories, I'm just going to have them built. But if they get built and they're wrong, then we build the wrong thing and maybe it breaks in production. Well, you might want to be a little more careful. So you want to look at how would I know it's wrong? Because I should always be checking the outputs anyway. But if it is wrong, what is the impact of that? What does that wrongness do? So some of that, as you're looking into that, that answer of where to trust it is going to be, very personal and very much on an industry level. But think about those of like how will you know if it's wrong and what is the impact of that wrongness? And then two different scenarios that will drive that is if I'm already the expert, well, then I can verify what's right or wrong. So I can give it information, it can give me information back, and I can quickly say, this is okay, that's not right, whatever. But if I'm not the expert and I'm asking it to be the expert, think about how you would go confirm that knowledge rather than just taking the AI at face value. So this is for if you're already using AI. But what happens, like, let's say you're trying to implement a new tool in your company, how do you pick which of the many LLMs out there to implement? So this leads us to our second one, which we call the Van Halen M&M rule. And to go into this rule, I have to tell you a story about the band Van Halen. So as Van Halen was getting big, people used to think they were really big divas because they were doing these big shows and had all of these outrageous requests. It turns out, well, I can't say for sure that they weren't divas, but turns out most of them were not them being divas. It was that they very specifically had wanted to put on the best shows possible. If they couldn't put on the best show possible, they didn't want to do it at all. And to put on those best shows, they were usually in large venues and had very detailed technical requirements to put that show on. They would document all of these very technical details. It would be in their contract with the venue, but hidden in there they would have what they called the M&M. Well, they wouldn't call it that, but there would be a clause about M&Ms. And in this clause, it says that in their dressing room prior to the show, there would be a bowl of M&Ms and every brown one would be picked out. There was also a clause in the contract that if they missed any one of their requirements, then Van Halen not only would not do the show, they would still get paid. So they're traveling, right? Traveling around the world or around the country. They're going place to place. They don't get there in time to check every technical requirement is met. So they're putting a lot of trust in the venue, or so you might think. But in reality, because of this M&M clause, they could go straight to their dressing room, and if they didn't see a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown ones picked out, they knew one of two things. Either the venue didn't read the contract to implement their technical requirements, or they were cherry picking which requirements to actually implement. Either way, that meant that Van Halen couldn't trust that they did the rest of the requirements unless they would not do the show and they would still get paid. So the reason we talk about this here with our M&M rule is as we're picking our LLMs and as we're picking which AI to use, we usually need a quick way to know if an LLM is going to meet our security and privacy requirements. Those are the big ones. You may have other requirements, but security and privacy tend to be the two biggest ones, especially for enterprise clients. So those are our filters. So we look at those two things. How do we know and can weed out which ones will not meet our security or privacy requirements? And to do that, we do two things. First, we look at can the AI be put on a local server or a local install? If it can be done on a local computer or a local server, that means it's the most secure because you can completely wall it off from the internet. The data will not leave your ecosystem, and it's just naturally safer if you know you can. That doesn't mean you have to, but you know you can. Most open source applications fall under this umbrella. The second thing we look at from a privacy perspective is HIPAA compliance. And the reason for this, HIPAA, of course, is the Medical Privacy Act, but it's very strict around the privacy. So one, the reason we use this is HIPAA compliance is usually higher than any privacy that we or even our clients would need. But two, saying you're HIPAA compliant when you're not, most people don't do that because it comes with really big fines. So if they say they are HIPAA compliant, you can usually trust that they are. And because that compliance is stricter than most of our privacy, then we know that they would also meet our own. So we run it through that. So you may still have 4 or 5 LLMs to choose from, but especially these days with thousands and hundreds of new applications going out there, a lot of which sadly are vaporware. It can be a quick way to say, yep, you don't meet these, so we're just not even going to spend any time on you. And then really spend time on the, say, 4 to 10 that do meet these to say, okay, well, now which ones are the best fit, knowing that they meet our security and privacy. We're going to talk security again a little later, but I wanted to put both of these rules of thumb here together. Okay, so now the fun part. So that was all the kind of, I wouldn't say boring stuff, but kind of introductory, get everybody on the same level. Now I really want to talk through what are the use cases in product management or for product owners. So the first one we're going to talk about is having the AI be our expert for us, or making them our SMEs, subject matter experts. To talk about that, I kind of have to tell a story, and I will say this story is not my own. The story is one of my colleagues. He is the first one who actually started using the AI or AI tools to help him learn more about his clients and about his subject matter experts. So the way it came about, though, my colleague was working for an IT client. They needed help with a network security automation project. And even though the company was really big, they had exactly one person, one SME, who was most knowledgeable about this specific project, which is about upgrading firmware, I think. So they get on this guy's calendar, they're trying to figure out what this process is. And my colleague notices that as they're asking these questions, his voice gets real shaky. And he's like, well, that's weird. Whatever, maybe it's nerves. So he keeps asking questions, and it's a 30-minute meeting. And after 20 minutes, he hadn't answered a single question, at least not directly, right? He was giving them the runaround effectively. So they go away. They're like, okay, fine, we'll try again. They schedule another meeting. Meeting number 2 comes. The guy's 20 minutes late to a 30-minute meeting. Work emergencies. Okay, that happens. But after 2 meetings, so an hour total of scheduled time, they still had no information on this process that they needed to automate. And even the people at the company, at our client, were getting frustrated because they were like, well, we need to automate this thing. Why can't we get this information out? And my colleague had been relegated to digging through these technical manuals and honestly, I think he told me he was beating his head against the wall. So then he thought, hey, what about ChatGPT? He was like, well, I had used it for personal stuff. I'd used it for brainstorming, but I had never actually used it to be my subject matter expert. And, he was pretty good at prompting. In fact, he's one of the best ones at Argon Digital. He's been teaching us a lot of what he knows. Um, but he's pretty good at prompting. And he knew that the AI could hallucinate. He knew he might get wrong answers, right? So he went in knowing that Teddy Roosevelt rule of only trust at 75%. But he was like, it can't be worse than what I'm already doing. So he spends a couple hours going back and forth with ChatGPT, just asking the prompt, asking more questions, follow-up questions, verifying things on Google. And he got way more out of that in a couple hours than he had in 2+ weeks with the subject matter expert. So we can really help, GPT can help, or any GPT or LLM can help us get information quickly. And then the time we spend validating it is much less than if we had tried to generate that information on our own. So we're going to talk here in a minute about how do you do that? How do you write a good prompt that gets you that information and gets the AI to be your SME for you? But before that, I'm going to talk about 2 takeaways from this story. So one, he used it obviously for a difficult stakeholder, a difficult SME, but it can be good for anything that you aren't already the expert on. If you're coming into a brand new space and you need to know something quickly, turns out most LLMs are trained on the data that we would want to know. So we can get a lot of information out of them and use that as kind of ammunition going into our meetings with our stakeholders. So I've been doing this all the time on my projects as well. The second one, and this one took a little bit longer to get to, is sometimes people are hesitant to give us information when we're talking AI or talking automation, and that's usually just out of fear. People just have it's probably common sense fear that if you automate what I'm doing, well, why do you need me anymore? So they're fearful that they're going to lose their job. And my colleague actually thought back and was like, oh, that was probably what was going on with this guy. It's why his voice got shaky. It's why he was giving us the runaround. We were going to automate the thing that he spent 75% of his time on. So he was worried. And while I can't say for all companies and all places, disclaimer, that that's not true, most of the time when we're doing these AI and automation projects, it's not necessarily to, cut people or make people lose their jobs. It's to remove the grunt work, remove the drudgery, remove the things that we can do faster and allow the people that we have to focus on those higher level tasks, the things that only humans can do. Now, Maybe sometimes that means we need fewer humans, but that's usually not, we're not getting rid of everybody. So because of this, it engenders that fear, and we may be on those front lines as product owners to help assuage, however they say that word, that fear that at least typically this is not the case. So those are the two takeaways. Okay, so this is only one slide. I have like one slide out of 30, but this is the meat and potatoes. This is the prompt engineering that everybody's talking about. How do you write a good prompt to tell the AI where to look and get you the right data? So because this, and honestly, you could have a whole day class just on prompt engineering. So I'm not going to say that you guys are going to be prompt engineer experts after this talk. In fact, I still don't consider myself a prompt engineer expert, but we tried to put a little bit of formality or structure to how do you write a good prompt. So in this case, it is the SMEs method because it's for our virtual SMEs. So SMES. So the first one is the setup. This is really the bulk of your prompts, right? This is the thing that you're going to send in first to the AI. And just to throw you for a loop, our acronyms have acronyms because it's more fun that way. So as you're building this prompt, so by and large, too many people write very short or concise or generic prompts expecting to get, magical data out. And while AI is great, it's not magic. So if you just give it a very simple question, it's probably going to give you a very simple answer, and that answer may be wrong. So, but the more information you give it, the better information it can give you out. And I actually really liked Jay's explanation of this yesterday at the keynote. The reason for this is it's got all this data that it's trained on. And if you ask it a generic answer, it's going to look across all of that data and it may not find what you're looking for. But if you give it more information of specific places to look, well, then it's going to focus in on that area. He talked about it as a neural network, but you can focus in on that area, and thus it'll give you more information about the data you are expecting versus something if it's just scanning all of the training it has. So as frustrating it is, and I had to get over some of my own impatience with prompt engineering, if you can put in the effort, then you'll get the best information back out. Okay, so how do we preach? How do we preach to the AI so it gives us information back? Well, the first of that is the P, the problem statement. Tell it in detail the problem that you're trying to solve. And more specifically, tell it how it can help you. Like maybe you can say, hey, I already know this. I'm looking for information on Y. Well, then it'll say, okay, you already know X. I'm not even going to bother looking for X. I'm going to go try to find Y. So the more detail you can give it, it'll narrow down what you get back in response. The R in preach is the role. Give it a role and more as specific as possible. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Specific and exact and all those synonyms that just mean give it more information to go to the right place. But in this case, so my colleague, he didn't just say network security engineer as the role. He said you're going to be the network security engineer for the FortiGate, Fortinet servers that are model XYZ. Right? And that meant that the AI then could ignore anything about network automation security if it was related to any other type of servers. It was only going to be looking at the Fortinet, FortiGate, or FortiGate, Fortinet, whatever the order is, server information. So the more specific you can give it, the better information you'll get. Even if you're having, hey, you're going to be an expert in product management. Okay, well, more specifically, maybe expert in product management for HR operations or for, credit or sales. Give it that role in a way that it can get that information back to you. The E here, get into those exact details. So the more granular the details, again, it could be part of the problem, it could be part of what you've done, it could be part of what you know. As many things as you know, let it give that information. The last one's here, just to make fun, make it a good word. So associates, who are the stakeholders? Who are the other roles involved or other people it may need to know about? Keep in mind that the CEO is going to review this automation or the project manager needs to review this document. Give it that information as well, because it'll give you that pieces of data back out. Let it know if you have any constraints, the C. This is especially true if you're dealing with anything that's like time bound or if you have budget constraints. I've definitely put in some where it's like, oh, make me a roadmap for this. Well, if I don't tell it how long of a roadmap, it's going to generate whatever it wants. And maybe it'll say, okay, here's your 2-year roadmap when I really wanted a 1-year roadmap or a 6-month roadmap because that's all I have. So give it that constraints. And this one, I didn't think it would be useful at first, but it really is. Give it the history. Tell it what you have done and haven't done, because it can then start excluding things that it doesn't have to go look for anymore. So once you have that prompt, and I get that that's going to be time consuming. That's not going to be something you can type up in 10 seconds and you've got a really good prompt. It's going to take something, it's probably going to be, for me, usually like a paragraph to 2 paragraphs of that prompt that I feed in. Then the modify format, the M. Tell it what kind of response you want back. So if you're having it write user stories for you, tell it that you want it in a user story format or a jobs to be done format or a technical story format. Do you want it in Gherkin acceptance criteria? Do you want it in JSON or XML? If you don't tell it, it's not going to give it back to you. It'll just give you that text because that's kind of its default mode. But it has the ability to feed back information in really almost any type of response. And we've actually been playing around with this a lot with JSON. You can even tell it things like, give me proper JSON, because sometimes if you just say JSON, it won't give it to you in proper, it'll give you like escaped JSON or something. I forget all the technical pieces, but so you can again, be specific about that as well. So that's usually the first thing you send in, that S&M of how you want the information out and the prompt itself. So the E, the expand, that's really where you start interacting with the AI. So you gave it a prompt, it gave you some answers. Now you want to have it expand on things. And there are, well, 3, but 2 really that I want to talk about of different ways that you can get better answers out of your AI depending on your scenario. And this is, you can actually tell it to answer in an outline or chain of thought way. So you can either expand after the fact or do it as part of the initial prompt. But the reason these 2 specifically are called out is because, so the first one of AI outlines. So I explained how the LLMs work, right? It takes your prompt, it generates the first bit, it goes back, evaluates it all, generates the next bit. If you tell it to give you an outline first, then it will generate that outline. But then when you ask it to look at it again, it looks at your answer, your prompt plus the whole outline, which means it has to look at its whole plan holistically and not be doing things step by step. It's not doing it piecemeal. So you can have that full picture view, and it makes it easier for the AI to tweak and fill things in when it starts generating those next responses for you. So we generally will be like, hey, start with an outline, then give me the detailed steps or something like that. Another piece is the chain of thought. So this is if you have like a complicated multi-step reasoning, and there's really not an easy way to break it down. You can't ask it back and forth. You can have them say, hey, give me this whole process and do it in a chain of thought method. And if you tell them that, then what it's essentially asking the AI to do is consider things step by step. So it'll complete one logical thought, then use that completed step to the next step. And it's a little bit better at keeping its chain of reasoning if you ask it to do that. So those are 2 ways to get it to expand on its information that's already given you. Another couple techniques that we like to use is one is role reversal. So once, let's say it was the network security engineer for the FortiGate, Fortinet servers. Now it says, okay, great. Now I'm the network security engineer. You're going to be the product manager. What questions should you ask? What questions should you ask to the network security engineer? So have it play a different role than the one you had it originally. So you can get different viewpoints for the project. So you can go back and forth, and there's lots of questions. One of the reasons why LLMs and AI became so popular is because they had that conversant nature. So you have that back and forth. But the last piece, this is what a lot of people forget about, but try to get the AI to actually examine its own answers and tell you what's wrong with them. So we call this the S, the sus, knowing our Teddy Roosevelt rule, right? It's only 75% correct. And we know how messy the real world is. We know there are going to be risks. We know there are weaknesses and potentially just flat out wrong information. We can use our brains along with the AI to try to find those problems faster. So we can have it red team. So red teaming is a business term where they have teams that specifically come in and try to find problems with projects and plans. The idea is that if the project is doomed to fail, it's better to know that now. So you can ask the AI to look at that as well. You can ask it for contrarian takes. Ask it to critique and say, why is it different? Or what would make this project go wrong? And the reason we might want to ask it for a contrarian take is because AIs are built to give us the statistically best answer. And because of that, it means that it's likely to be really from one point of view. So we may want to specifically have it be different points of view. Okay, we only have 15 minutes left and I have a lot more slides. So I'm gonna go quickly through the rest of this, but I did wanna make sure I spent good time on this because this prompt engineering is really some of the meat and potatoes of how do you do this. But I'll share the slides with Matt, and so everybody will have the slides afterwards for some of these other ones that I'm gonna go through. So I'm going to breeze through these because probably a lot of people know this, but there's lots of different options. These are some of the free ones. So most people know ChatGPT, Bing Copilot, Google Gemini, and Claude. The other two down here do require accounts, but they are free. Some more advanced ways are using OpenAI's custom GPTs. So these are part of their paid tier or their playground. Um, this is just a more technical way you can get in. You can play with the parameters, the temperature, understand a little more about what's going on under the hood. One thing to call out here is just that if you're using OpenAI's custom GPTs, it's a little less secure because they do not let you opt out. If you are using those custom GPTs, any data you put in can be used for training their models. The playground, however, is the most secure because it's part of their API network for OpenAI, and so they will not train on your data. So just keeping those in mind. Okay, so let's talk through a little bit of the art of the possible. So we talked through one very specific use case using virtual SMEs. These are going to be more generic ones, some of which we've started, some of which are in the future, or some of which may be a pipe dream for me. Hopefully not pipe dream, but we'll see. So on our projects as product owners, we typically have these various phases. We make it a circle. Obviously, in Agile, we're doing these very iteratively, but we're still, we're envisioning, we're identifying business objectives. We elicit our user stories. We make sure we understand the product and our stakeholders. We build it, we launch it, and we measure it. So all the pink stars here are just where we see potential use cases for AI. So that's why I want to spend a little more time on the actual use cases. So even today, you can already use AI, just a chat GPT kind of thing, to help identify business objectives, right? Using RAG, which we're going to talk about in a minute, feed it your project charter and have it come up with what the business objectives are. Or another thing we're doing a lot today is a lot of people spend a lot of time summarizing things that have already happened, summarizing a release, a sprint, the requirements as a whole to executives. The AI can do that for us if it has access to that data. So these things are already happening. We talked about the virtual SMEs. We're just starting to get to the place where AI can actually generate the visual models, which is great. That's been a dream of mine forever of like, give an elicitation session and have it do the process flow. Why do I have to build it? It's also pretty good already at being able to take transcripts and generate user stories or acceptance criteria. These I haven't seen as much yet, but I can imagine that they'd be a world where they will happen and be very useful. So having the AI assist with sprint planning, being able to look at our backlog and based on the dependencies and the priorities, pull in the most likely, top stories based on our prior capacity. And then the product owner and the team is just going, yeah, does that look right? No, that one's, not the right story to bring in, or we know something you didn't, but really speed that up. One that I'm really excited about, I really want to get to a world where the AI knows my entire backlog. And as the new stories come in, we'll say, hey, here's the impact to everything you've already built. It's going to break something, or it's going to cause issues with your interlocks, your dependencies. So I haven't seen that come in yet, but I think that would be huge. And then just like it can write acceptance criteria, I really wanted to write my test cases. I mean, as much as I love testing, I think all product owners should wear a testing hat. I don't really like writing the test cases themselves. So I'd love the AI to do that, or maybe even run the tests for me, and I only review the results, right? Getting to a world where I have just data fed to me and I'm more the reviewer, the arbiter of that data versus having to actually do that grunt work. As I said, in order to do this, the AI has to have access to that data. That means you're probably using a RAG or retrieval augmented generation to get to your data so it knows your context and give you answers specific to you. To do that, I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to focus a couple on one. Make sure that so the GIGO here is garbage in, garbage out. Just like any other data project, AI is the same way. You want to make sure whatever data you're feeding it is good data. And so that means making sure you understand the process for feeding it data, understanding maybe when that data gets outdated. How does the AI get new data as new data comes in? And who is controlling that? So that will lead you to how do you get it in there? So there's some couple options there. It can be humans, it can be APIs. IPaaS here stands for integration platform as a service. So those are kind of low code, no code automation tools that could help hook your AI to data. There's a new thing called MCP, Model Context Protocol. I might have mangled that, but it's a relatively new thing. It came out, I think, in November, but it's kind of like a universal adapter for data sets. so that you can just connect the AI to your whatever your data set is. The people, however, is going to be huge because people are the strength or weaknesses of your AI rollout. The tool is not going to know if a person is putting in bad data or if a person is giving it proprietary data that it shouldn't have. So you have to make sure that as you're doing these AI initiatives, you've trained your people. They know what they can and cannot put in. They know hopefully how to write good prompts. And just like any other project, that means that there's going to be change management, and we're going to have to over communicate as we do that rollout. Some options here. These are some RAG options that we like. Cohere is going to be your more enterprise option. It's great. It's got great LLM. It's really cutting edge. But again, is that enterprise level? Anything LLM is great. It's open source. It can be, you can do it as a person and set it all up. They've got different options to do a local install. You can set it up in AWS, or they can set up everything for you. So we talk more about those if we have time, but I don't think we're going to. But because I wanted to get through one use case that we've been doing at ourselves, and hopefully my demo works. I found out yesterday my demo didn't work because I got kicked off the Wi-Fi. But we have been doing our own AI platform for our own product owners. Because, training is hard. Trying to teach everybody how to write good prompts is hard. So can we take off some of that cognitive load and give them a way to interact with the AI to help us do our work, but in a smarter way? So I'm going to show you that. Some of you may have been at my talk in November. So in November at the Agile at Scale SIG, I did a talk on technical acceptance criteria. So it's called BDD when there are no users. And it was really about all the mistakes people make as they're trying to write acceptance criteria for these really technical backend processes. And one of the things I talked about is how, if you have a process flow like this one, how do you identify the acceptance criteria out of it? You get that nugget for free. It is if you're building this in one user story, it's each unique path through the flow is an acceptance criteria. So this is my example. It's very simple. It's an automation that takes an email from an email mailbox, searches Salesforce, and creates cases and or contacts if they don't exist, and then we'll notify via Slack of success or failures. So through this, again, I don't have the animation here, there would be 6 unique paths through this process flow. So if I was going to build this process flow as one user story, I would expect 6 acceptance criteria, one for each of those. So we're going to see what the AI does. So I have this prompt. I'll just show it up here. AI is not quite great at taking pictures yet, so I did have to write what the process flow was in text form. I also gave it the same nugget I told you, right? That each path through it should be one acceptance criteria. And let's try it out. Okay. Oh, of course we just updated the page. So our technical team is working on, hopefully, there we go. Oop. Come on. So here you can put transcripts, in this case, I just put the flow, but you can put any of the information. And what we've done here is really, again, try to take that cognitive load of how do you write a good prompt to tell it what to do and put it into these buttons. The other thing is because we're using RAG and we've been doing product management for 25 plus years, it's trained on all of our information, the books we've written, the articles. What does it mean to write good Gherkin acceptance criteria? Even probably my talk from last November. It has all that information that's using to base its answers. Let's see if it works this time. That's a good sign. We got the big blue pop-up, which I did not get yesterday. And sadly, the AI is still not as fast as I would like, but it'll get there.
You have a spinning thing, so that's standard.
Yes, we at least know it's working, it's thinking. So here we get our user story. In this case, I think the prompt is doing it in a jobs to be done format. And then we have our acceptance criteria. So successfully processed email for existing contact, for new contact. It's got 2 of our error cases. It's missing 2 others. So it seems like it's consolidated them. But 4 out of 6, that's still 66% of my acceptance criteria. I could write the other 2. So that still saves me however long minus, its processing time to generate this. And so we're not going to show it now, but you could put it back in there and have it improve. We could have it summarize it. We can reset it because everything has its context window, so it has limits. If I start asking it about too many different things, it'll start to get confused and start hallucinating. But it's really cool. And so we're using this internally. I'll have a QR code if anybody wants to play around with it as well. But that's just one use case. There's hundreds or thousands of potential use cases. Okay, I got 5 minutes. We're definitely not going to get through all of the security stuff. Um, the big thing here is just know what your security policy is for your organization. Most of them fall under one of these three. So as long as it's not trained on our data, as long as there's not trained on our data and we're not putting proprietary information in, or don't use it all, we're going to build it in-house. If you fall into the don't use it all, that means you're probably looking at either building your own LLM or using open source that you're, say, putting on a local install. So know which bucket you fall into. Regardless of the bucket, I'm going to bring this up again. We talked about it earlier. Training, training, training. The people are going to be using these AI tools. They have to know what's allowed and what's not. We like to think of this as like the new phishing training. Back in the day, people didn't know not to click on suspicious links, that they were going to get ransomware. We had to train them and we had to keep reminding them. And I mean, honestly, phishing is still a big deal today. So if something like that still takes that long to train, imagine how long it's going to take for AI. So we need to make sure we put in those guardrails. This just gives you the overview of which AIs are training on data or lets you opt out. I'm not going to walk through all of it. It usually depends on whether you're using API versus UI, and then whether you're using their free version versus their paid version. Typically, if you're using free, they're not going to let you opt out of training. But if you're paying, they usually will, or they just won't train on your data. Some options that are out there. So these are kind of the big four. There are hundreds of LLMs. These are just kind of the big ones. So OpenAI is the one most people know about, ChatGPT. Anthropic is a great place. They're kind of a little bit ahead on RAG right now. They built something called contextual RAG. They're the makers of Claude. They're very security and privacy forward. So those are good if you are looking at net new tools. If you're already a Google shop or already a Microsoft shop, you can probably just use their LLMs. They were behind, but they're catching up quickly. And once they connect like G Drive and SharePoint, they're going to be at least as good. If you are building your own, just some things to keep in mind. Building your own is really expensive, so it's not really feasible for most people. You can start with open source, and that is usually what we would just suggest. If you really want to keep it in-house, start with open source, put it on your server, and then you can tweak it. You can train the models. You can use your own RAG or connect it to your own data sources. And a tool that helps you do that is Hugging Face. So this is a tool online that lets you evaluate all sorts of LLMs, and it's got things like leaderboards for different objectives. It'll let you compare different LLM responses based on the same prompt. So it's just a really cool website. And think about, do you really need a large language model? Maybe a small language model will work. Think about whether on-prem or cloud, and how will you measure? So a couple things just in terms of where is all this going. Some of this is already here, right? We think that with AI, we're really going to be able to connect to all different data sources, and that's already happening with MCP. But what does that mean? It means that the AI has access to all the data in your org, not just your backlog, every email, every Slack. And in not an ideal world, but potential future world means you could create AI avatars of every person, because it wouldn't be just company specific, it could be personal specific, right? It has access to my OneNote. So it has all of my notes that I've taken over all the years. And then people ping it and not me. If my AI can't answer the question, then you talk to me. And the AI is available 24/7. You'll hear a lot about agentic AI. This is becoming more and more popular. So this is where the AI is less passive and more active. You can actually give it an objective, and it will take the steps in different applications to make those objectives, to complete those objectives. And then I talked about those context window, that how much information you can process before you start getting fuzzy or getting wrong answers. The predictions are that within either this year or next year, we may have LLMs that have unlimited context windows. So we won't, it won't degrade at a certain level, which would just be crazy. So a few key takeaways. Use Gen AI for our product ownership. It's not good at everything. Keep, remember that Teddy Roosevelt rule, and don't forget about your security. When you get the slides, it has all of the resources. And I just realized I left the KAA feedback form. Please don't submit the KAA feedback form. But if you want additional information or to play around in that platform I showed, the QR code on the right. So we have all of 30 seconds for questions.
We can probably spend a little bit extra. Candace, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. I was putting in the Sales questions. There was I worked with a compliance professional, and he created early on, this was maybe 2 years ago, he kept getting all of these questions about our companies. We operate in Europe, MIA, and because we have all these ISO certifications and SOC 2 and so on and so forth, he created compliance guy agent to which was trained on all of the documents, and especially where there's a lot of standard documents and text and things like that. It did a pretty good job even 2 years ago. Um, so it's just amazing. And even at Keepos and Agile yesterday, I can't remember who it was, if it was Jay or somebody else. We were talking about quantum computing. It's like you could train it pretty easily, or the information that you get, the 75% was even higher for something like quantum computing, because there's just not a lot of that which is out there is
Good.
pretty, it's all like research. It's all sort of standard papers and things like that. So it's back to your garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. It's like if there's a lot of really good, high quality data to train on, then it's probably pretty good. So no, it's really great to go through all of that. And I put in the chat while you were talking. I'll send that. I'll put that on the recording that'll be on our YouTube channel for folks, and if they want to join the Slack. It'll be the Agile Austin Slack community. It'll be there too. So, any questions? I know we're at the top of the hour here. Any questions for Candace? There was so much, so I don't know. Maybe just time for a couple of quick ones. There weren't any on chat that I noticed, and everybody can come off of mute. I turned, I allowed all that for everybody.
This is Stephen Archer. I just had a real quick one. This was awesome, Candace. Thank you so much. But I saw where you were, in your demo, you were writing user stories, acceptance criteria, et cetera. Could this also be used, I'm assuming, for splitting features or slicing features, splitting stories, things like that? I mean, would it be interpretive enough to understand if you gave it a time box, like, you know, break things down to fit within this increment, you know?
So some of it will depend on how much it's trained on in terms of like your team, but you can say like, hey, normally we get through however much capacity, or, we have X capacity. Can you break this down into stories that would fit into a 2 week sprint? Because even though sprints are normally 2 weeks, they're not always. So you would want to tell it how long are your sprints. We have, say 3 sprints. Can you break it down into stories? And it should be pretty good. Even just normal chat GPT, again, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll give you its approximation based on the information you give it. So yeah, we're actually working on how do you generate features, break down features, and eventually we want to be able to do all that in a visual format. But right now it's all text.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I bet it could even do, because these things are pretty good at doing things with structured formats, like canonical formats, like invest criteria. It's like,
Mhm.
does this user story meet the end? Is there enough information here to make it? It'd be interesting to see, like, if you were following invest criteria for user stories or something like that. It'd probably do a pretty good job with that, because it's some structure.
Yeah, we didn't show it, but I think that's one of the things we do when we do the let's see if it goes in here. And this improve requirements button, that's wrapped in the prompt of like, keep in mind, here's what good requirements look like, or here's what a good story is. And it'll spit back like, here's how you're not meeting invest, or you forgot security, or one of the other ilities. So yeah, if you give it the right information, which again, we're covering it with these buttons, but you could just write your own prompts.
Right. And then back to your earlier point, Candace, you were talking about, like, if you had a backlog in, Jira or whatever tool that you happen to use, and it's relatively well structured in terms of, like, here's some good user stories it would learn, or you could tag them. It's like, here are some good, epic definitions. Like, here's kind of what good looks like. To imagine if I'm a PO and I'm trying to start writing, like, what does good look like here? It's like, well, here's some examples, rewrite it, and then give me links to the things that are the really good examples. I
Mhm.
like that with Perplexity, because it's not, Perplexity is sort of in the public space, but it always gives you links to, like, because you said it's 75% right, but show me why you think it's right. Like, give me the links so I can take a look and I can learn from them myself. So, and I'm sure other tools do that too. So, Thanks for the question, Stephen. Anything else before we wrap up for today? Thanks for the positive feedback. If you have any constructive feedback, we like learning here, failure, learning, all that good stuff. So please feel free to reach out to me or Candace. And we will see you on May 30th, where Tristan Slominski is going to be talking about the Thousand Brains project and what he's doing there. It's pretty interesting, but more future focused, but still practical for today. So with that, Candace, thank you so much, not only for today's talk, but on the heels of your wildly popular Keep Austin Agile talk yesterday. So really appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks for having me. And thanks everybody for coming.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.